everyone. Hi to our DevOps session where we're going to start from zero and hopefully bring you to the hero state. So this is going to be about DevOps, and first of all, of course, we need to understand what DevOps is and why we are going to need to implement the DevOps procedures and the whole DevOps, practices into our lives. So let me start with the first slide, which is going to list the session objectives and hopefully the takeaways. So the first thing we're going to do is, like I've said, defining what DevOps is. And we're going to do a couple of demos. These aren't going to be hands-on demos. I will just take you through the demos and through a couple of screenshots, and I will be able to share the screenshot with the screenshots so that after the session you can go step by step and replicate the demos that I'm going to do. And at the end of the session, the idea is you're going to be able to create your own DevOps, the DevOps cycle on your own in a couple of minutes. I will be sharing the tools as well that you're going to be able to download. And again, at the end of the session, you will be able to spin up your own DevOps cycle. So why do we need DevOps? And I guess you all have, had this type of experience where you have a couple of different teams in the company. You got a software development team, and then you got an IT pro team who's kind of supposed to do the deployments and all that stuff. They do manage the servers, and then again the software development team who does all the development. And the problem is that we always get some kind of a deliverable from the software development team. Those are the artifacts in the DevOps. So you get the executables, you get the binaries or whatever they deliver, and once you get the deliverables, you just give them to the the IT pros, the people who manage the servers, who are responsible from the availability of the servers and all that stuff, and you hand over all those pieces, and they're supposed to make it work, right? And the problem that we see every day in companies we work with is that those deliverables, when you deliver, if you're a software developer, you deliver the bits, and then the IT pros come back, the deployment team comes back and says it's not working. We deploy it, it's just not working, we're all backed it. And when you go back to the development team, I mean, that's the classical answer, right? They come back and they say it just works on my machine. So you better make it work on production as well. And this conflict never essentially, this ping pong of responsibilities across multiple teams never essentially gets solved. That's the thing. And if you got more than, if your process is more complex than this, there might be more players than just the development team and the deployment team and the management team. You might even have, more problems than I'm listing here. So, and this barrier between the two teams needs to be removed. That's the thing. And in order to accomplish that, we need to unite people. And here is the description of DevOps, actually, and this is from Donovan Brown, who works at Microsoft. And I really like this definition because, first of all, let's read it. DevOps is the union of people, processes, and products to enable continuous delivery of value to our end users. That's a beautiful definition, and let's go word by word, because even the order of the words used in this definition are actually pretty important. So the union of people, so we need to get people together to deliver value to our customers. The first thing that you need to do is to get people together and let them understand that they are working towards a single goal, instead of just handling their own responsibility, like I got the servers, they're alive, they work well, and that's what I do. If the deployment isn't working, it's not my problem. Whatever you guys are giving me, just get it back and fix it. That shouldn't be the mentality. The mentality should be that we're all in this together, we are unified, and we're working against a single goal, which is delivering something to our customers. And it doesn't matter where the problem lies, we need to fix it together. So first off, you need to unite the people in the company and make them understand that they need to work against this single goal. And this is a culture shift, this is a culture change. And this is what DevOps is about. Because, I mean, here's one of the questions I usually get when I talk to people about DevOps. If they're IT pro, they come back and say, hey, am I going to be able to do this? Well, what's going on? I mean, this whole thing is looking like, it's called DevOps. Do I need to do development? I'm not a developer. I'm an IT pro guy. I do manage servers. Am I going to lose my job? That's essentially where the question goes. And the answer to that is no. I mean, you don't need to be a developer, but you don't need to be the developer who understands from distributed transaction and all that stuff. You don't need to be the hardcore developer, but you are already actually doing some development. I mean, think about it. You are doing some kind of a scripting, right? You are doing some PowerShell stuff. You are writing some scripts to, automate some of your daily, operations. You're not just using UI. You're already doing that. I mean, if you aren't using any, if you are even not aware of what PowerShell is, that might sound a little bit troubling, but I'm sure that's not the case. So you are doing a little bit of scripting, and that's what we are talking about when we talk about DevOps. And if you go back and talk to developers, like, I mean, what is this DevOps thing? Do we need to manage all of these servers now? In the past, those were, there was a different team who did that. What now? Are we responsible not just developing the software and then deploying and managing the servers out there as well? No, it's not the case, but it might be, because from now on, it doesn't matter whose responsibility that is. I mean, that is something that you need to do. Get the teams together, unite the teams, and help them understand that if the value that you're creating, if the software that you're creating isn't delivered to the customer, if the customer isn't able to use it, and if you're very slow on doing that, then it's hurting the company. So this part of the definition, when it says the union of people, and in the order of the 3 requirements that we got here, 3 materials that we got in the definition, this is the top most important thing. If you don't unite people, it doesn't matter what tools you use. It doesn't matter you use VSTS, Jenkins, or it doesn't matter simply. I mean, the tools are just after you unite the people. And the second thing which is important is the processes. So once you got people united, then you need to define your processes and improve your processes. And finally, the third item is the products that you are going to use to enable and to automate all this. The products are the third item. The tools that you are going to use are the third item at the end of the list. Once you got everything set, and then you choose the products that fits to your requirements, and you can start from there. At the end of this definition, one thing that you're going to notice, it mentions the continuous delivery of value to our end users. It doesn't say continuous delivery of software. It doesn't say continuous delivery of artifacts or whatever that is. It says continuous delivery of value. So it's important to change the culture in the company to understand that we are supposed to deliver value to our customers. It's not about the bits and pieces that you deliver. Obviously, at the end of the day, those are the things that creates the value, but you need to look from the customer's perspective and understand that you need to deliver the value to your customer. If you understand that, if the culture changes within the company, it doesn't matter where the problem lies within the company. A software developer will be able to understand that if it's not deployed to their servers, if it's not alive, then they're failing. It doesn't matter if you did write the code or something else. And from an IT pro perspective, they are going to understand that the value needs to go out there, and it's their responsibility to make happen. So let's step back for a moment. I'm sure you have seen scenarios like, I mean, how can I improve this? And then the answer is, let's focus on our processes, right? And if you still don't have the teams united, and you got a software development team and an IT pro team there, and you start focusing into your process and try to improve it, what you're going to come up is like, I mean, instead of delivering artifacts and deliverables, then you're going to start documenting stuff. So you're going to write some scripts, you're going to start documenting how the deployment needs to be, and that job will be most probably handled by your developers. So you're going to tell the developers, you better write better documentation for deployment, because the deployment team, the IT pros aren't able to do that. That doesn't fix the problem because that documentation gets never perfect, even if you iterate through that millions of times, because, you know, again, the developer sits down and writes the documentation from this perspective that everything is just going to work. And when you hand out the documentation to your IT pro team, they're going to go through the documentation, and there's going to be some error or something which isn't included in the documentation anyway. So the point I'm trying to make here is that the automation part is the critical part of this whole DevOps scenario as well. So let me tell you a very small story of mine. When I started, you know, it's been like, I guess, 6 or 7 countries so far I presented this deck in this session. When I started preparing the content for this particular presentation, it just struck me like, am I doing what I'm preaching? And obviously, we are doing a lot of DevOps stuff in our company, and we are trying to improve every sprint, essentially. What we do Scrum in our company, but there was just one thing that I noticed, that we weren't very successful, and that was a very small, tiny thing, which is if you're using VSDS, you might know about, you know, the concept of, you know, adding sprints and all that stuff. We are using Scrum, and we do have weekly sprints in our company. And what I noticed is every Monday I keep adding a sprint into VSDS. Every Monday I just log into VSDS before our sprint planning meeting. And I define a sprint. I select the Monday and select the next Friday. Look at the last sprint's number, increment that, write it down. This is all manual process that I was doing, being the product owner there. And I did this for like 4 years. And again, when I was preparing the content for this, I was like, hey, I should do what I preach, so I should automate this. So I did go out there, and this is what it is actually. I did go out there and start looking what APIs VSDS exposes so that I can automate this whole process. And I started writing a small Azure function, which is, these are just the logs I got in the slide deck right now, just to show you that this runs weekly every Thursday. That's, in our case, that's enough, more than enough. So every Thursday it runs, it connects to VSDS APIs, figures out if we need a new sprint, and adds a new sprint with the new name, with the new dates, and everything is automated. It's just 15 or 20 lines of C# code. In my case, because I'm familiar with C#, I prefer to write in C#. But if you're if you know PowerShell, you can do it as well. If you know Bash, Azure Functions support all of these languages. You can even write some JavaScript if you're not familiar with those languages. And the thing is, it's just about 15, 20 lines of code that I could deploy to Azure. And at this particular situation, I guess I'm not even paying for this, because this is part of the free tier in Azure, the lifelong free tier that comes with Azure Functions. It is running within that free tier, so I'm not even paying for the script running every Thursday. And it is creating sprints for me every week. So what does this make? I mean, is this worth the investment? I mean, this is a very, very tiny, small example, but is it worth investing? That's the question, right, that comes to your mind. I mean, you could, every Monday before the meeting, I could just add sprints, and that was fine for 4 years. But here's the thing. When I was out of office, the team was actually sending me instant messages like, hey, we are missing a sprint. And I was just logging in and trying to end sprints. Sometimes I log in at a couple of sprints to make sure. I mean, why would I do that? I mean, it's error prone because I'm a human being and I make mistakes. I don't even make consistent mistakes. I just do random mistakes. So that's worse. I mean, and this is something we can automate pretty fast. I mean, it's been just the 30 minutes of coding, I guess. And hopefully we are safe for the next couple of years, I'm hoping, if the VSDS APIs do not change. But if you can automate it, just automate it. And the idea is, if the machine can do it, the machine should do it. Why would we have humans do it if the machine can do it, right? So let's go on. if you're not going to do DevOps, keep in mind that your competition is going to do. That's a very important and valuable argument, I guess, because, I mean, this is a video that you're watching, and like I've said, I did this presentation in a couple of countries, and I'm sure Microsoft is doing it all over the world. So if you're not doing DevOps, your competition is going to do that. And when they do it, they're going to be able to deliver value faster to their customers than you are. It doesn't matter how perfect your processes are. If you are human dependent, you cannot go to production like 10 times a day. Do you need it? I don't know. That's your call. But the idea is you cannot go to production as fast as a company or a service provider who has the full DevOps cycle implemented. And delivering value to your customers, I hope that is important. And being able to do that very fast in an iterative approach is critical. So your competition is going to do that even if you don't do it. Keep it in mind, even if you perfect everything internally, you're not going to be able to compete if you don't implement the DevOps practices. It increases the velocity, obviously, reduces downtime, and this kind of relates to human error as well, because, like I've said in the example of creating just this little sprints, if I did a mistake, if I just pick Saturday instead of the next Friday, the whole velocity of burnout chart will look much different. So we need to reduce human error by automating the processes, and reducing downtime relates to more, being able to deploy faster in an automated fashion. If you're doing deployments like if you are scheduling your deployments, for example, you're scheduling in specific time intervals where your customers are most probably not using your app or your project or your whatever that is, your software, then it shows that you can do improvements there. If you are waiting for your customers not to use your app because you're going to take it down and operate and take it out, that shouldn't be there. At least your competition will do a better job, and they're going to be able to update and operate their applications with zero downtime, and they will provide a better service. You don't want to be there. So this is a Microsoft conference, obviously, and you might think, hey, what if I'm using a non-Microsoft tool or framework or something like, and so the world has changed. Microsoft has changed as well. Right now, if you look at this particular slide, you're going to see a lot of non-Microsoft languages, non-Microsoft platforms, and non-Microsoft operating systems. I'm very happy to say that right now, if you start with VSDS, for example, it's the only platform that can give you the build agents on all three platforms, which means you can build your stuff on, you can have a CI/CD pipeline and build your software on a Linux machine, on a Windows machine, and on a Mac machine, and you can get hosted agents for all these three platforms. And Microsoft is, at least at the moment of this recording, is the only company that can provide you all of that. And being able to get all of your options from a single vendor has its advantages. And what else do we have? We do have a wide variety of support to different languages. Some of them are supported on the hosted build agents. Some of them are just stuff that you can even if you have your own let's say you got your own language or something, you got your own compiler, it's crazy custom, no one else out there is using. You can download the build agent and install on a VM on Azure and start running there and install your own dependencies or create your own environment, and you can do whatever you want there. So it supports all that you can do there. And deploy to any platform is important as well. I mean, you might expect, if you weren't there for the last couple of years, you might expect that this whole thing should be locked down into a particular platform. No, it's not. I mean, if you use VSDS, you can straight do deployments to Android, iOS, obviously the Windows platforms. If you are talking about cloud deployment, you can deploy to AWS, Azure. The list goes on and on. I mean, I don't think there's anything that's not supported. Even if there is something that's not supported officially, there's always plugins on the marketplace, and there's always extensibility points where you can build the integration. So let's go through the full stack, right? If you want to have the full DevOps story, what should you start, from where you should start with, and what do you need to have. So let's start from the planning part. First of all, you need to be able to plan your work, the work that you have. Whether you're going to use Kanban or Scrum, you need the tools to be able to track the work that you're going to do, your team is going to do, being able to assign, or depending to what methodology you're using, you need to be able to manage all that work. And you need to have the tools to be able to do that. And then the next step is to be able to provision the environment or configure the environment depending where you are. Provisioning the environment means, hey, I'm going to do a deployment to Azure. Here are the resources that I need. Give me that. And make it in an automated fashion. That's what we're talking about. Being able to provision environments. Like do not get a production staging testing environments from day zero, and these are going to be static environments that we reuse. Instead, we're going to have consumable environments that we're going to be able to spin up, use, run our test, and drop it. Because we're in the cloud, we can just consume the environment as well, and this is the full environment that your application is going to run. And once you got the provisioning done, and the next step is the configuration for the environment. You might not need the configuration of the environment if you're on the platform as a services, but if you're doing VMs, if you got your custom VMs and all that stuff, then you're going to need some kind of a configuration and be able to manage the configuration across your hundreds of VMs. And the next step will be creating some test data and then automating the tests. I mean, hopefully you got some tests. It doesn't matter what that is. It might be integration unit tests, and even actually manual tests. We need to do that as well. We cannot cover the full scenario with automated tests, but you need to have the tools so that you can automate as much as you can and make it part of your pipeline. And then you should be able to have the tools where you can manage your manual test and your testers. And we're going up the stack. So the next step is people. So people tap in, and they're going to need to approve processes during this whole automation. They're going to need to, we're going to need to notify people about the, what's happening during the pipeline. So, and whatever tool that you are going to use needs to support to include the people in it. So it needs to support to be able to notify people who are responsible of approving these processes and then getting approvals. And finally, the top item in my list is performance, being able to monitor performance, diagnostics, being able to gather all that diagnostics data from your platform, and being able to manage your telemetry. If you are doing this, all these items, if you're doing all these items, then that's the full DevOps beauty. That's the full DevOps stack. If you're doing just part of it, that's good. Keep it up. Keep adding stacks and make it as full as possible. And to be honest, let's see what Microsoft has to offer, right? I mean, you might have some kind of a, maybe you got, like I said, Jenkins somewhere, or a build agent somewhere. You're using some open source tools to make things happen. But what you're doing is like you got a small piece of that. Maybe you are just doing, the planning section only. You got some tools you're using. So what has Microsoft to offer to make that picture perfect? So let's start from the planning and tracking work. This is where we got Team Foundation Server and VSTS. VSTS is the cloud solution that we have, Visual Studio Online, Hugo. It's a managed service. It updates frequently. TFS is the one that you can download, purchase, and install on your own on-prem servers. And then obviously it still receives updates, but you're going to need to manage it because it's in your own servers. So these two tools will handle the tracking and the planning work part. The next step is provisioning the environment. Azure Resource Manager, Infrastructure as Code, is going to help you to define the environment as a code and then be able to provision as many environments as you want as consumables within the cloud. And the way that you define that might be a simple JSON file. You can do it with PowerShell. You can do it with C#. Again, flexibility is there. It doesn't matter what language or what scripting thing that you will be able to do that with Azure Resource Manager. And for the configuration of the environment, what we got is desired state configuration with PowerShell again. This is going to help. This is again something in Azure that you can use. You can use it with Azure VMs. You can use it with VMs that you got on-prem. And this is going to help you to manage the configuration of your VMs from a central location and make sure the configurations are always applied. It doesn't matter whatever happens on the machine. Installing the application, what do we have to distribute and install the application? We got NuGet and Web Deploy to do that. To configure the application, you can use tokenizers in the CI/CD pipeline in VSTS. Creating the test data backpacks are beautiful things. If you didn't do any research about it, I strongly suggest to look into that. Coded UI and web load tests are stuff that we got in VSTS and TFS that people can use to automate their tests. And then the Microsoft Test Manager will help you to manage your manual tests and give your testers an environment to work for. And finally, for performance diagnostics and telemetry, we got Application Insights. This is a service you can use from Azure. This is something you can use for stuff you got deployed in Azure and for applications running on-prem in your own servers as well. Application Insights will help you measure the performance, see the performance of your app, and see where it lacks the performance. And it's going to give you the diagnostics data that you need to troubleshoot the problems. And you can even use Application Insights SDK to push custom telemetry to App Insights. It can do even sampling. So Application Insights is a beautiful thing if you didn't use it. That is something, Application Insights is something I enable for every service that I enable and deploy, to be honest, just to be able to get that data whenever I need. And Application Insights will give you all that you need in the sense of it's going to show you the full architecture of your app. It's going to show you the third parties, the endpoints that you're connecting to. It will give you the full graph. It will give you the logs for those. It will even give you suggestions about how to fix your problems. So this is definitely something that you should enable. If you didn't look into that, I suggest to do some additional research. And to go back to the beginning, what we have in hand to enable this full stack is Visual Studio Team Services. If you want to go online with the cloud and have a hosted service to get all of these products, then there's VSTS. If you want to install these tools and use it from a local server in your own data center, then TFS is going to be the one that can provide you all of these features. So the feature parity exists in all the platforms, even in cloud or on-premise. And this is a suggested guide from step by step from 1 to 4, where you go and get the VSTS TFS, and you go into the Test Manager. You start doing the tests, you do the release management, and then if you're going to do provisioning, you can use ARM templates again. Just to recap, you can use the automation service in Azure, you can use PowerShell DCS, and finally VSTS and Application Insights will do the continuous integration and deployment and get you all of the telemetry and diagnostics and performance data that you need. Another perspective to this slide might be, with other tools that you might be already using, right? You might already use GitHub, and that's perfectly fine. You might use, like I've said, Jenkins or Gradle or, Puppet, Chef. It doesn't matter. All of these tools can be integrated with Microsoft technologies and tools as well. Again, the idea is if you don't have anything and you want to start with your own DevOps journey, then Microsoft has everything that you need, the full stack. If you already have some of these pieces deployed and you're already using it, you don't need to switch those. Of course, Microsoft would be happy if you switched, but you don't need to. You just keep using whatever you got, and in order to fill in the gaps, you can come into the Microsoft stack and pull in the ones that you need. All of these pieces have the integrations that you need to make it happen. So again, going step by step back to the beginning, this is kind of the full DevOps frame. On level 100, people, processes, and the business value, it's what we discussed. So uniting the people, getting the processes straight, and delivering business value to your customers. On level 200, you start implementing the practices. The infrastructure as code might be a practice if you want to do the automated provisioning of your environment. And the continuous integration is the deployment part and the integration of your source code to your environment. Azure deployment is one of the tools that you can use if you're going to go with infrastructure as code. Chef, Puppet, on Linux VMs on Azure is again something that you can use, and all of the integration points are there. All of the tools are on the Azure portal. Visual Studio Team Services with Git is something that you can use. If you're using Git on GitHub, you can actually move for free to Visual Studio Online because VSTS has free Git repos, even private free Git repos. But if you got Jenkins, you can keep using it. And GitHub, Visual Studio Team Services, Gradle, these are all of the tools on the level 300 practice perspective. These are on the tools that you can start integrating today. So here's a tool I want to share with you before we finish this session, because this is a tool that you can use to create a full DevOps pipeline from nothing to the full stack. This is a tool called Yeoman. Yeoman itself is just a code generator, by the way. This is something that you can run on your machine if you got Yeoman installed. What you need to do is to install an additional generator which is going to generate all of your DevOps pipeline. So in this case, I'm picking this install generator command when I run Yeoman. And once I do that, you're going to need to type in the generator-team. This is going to start downloading the generator that we are going to use to create the full pipeline. And once you do that, here we go, and I'm running Yo-Team, which is going to execute the team generator. This is built by Microsoft. This is a tool by Microsoft, and this is open source. You can access the code on GitHub as well. And the first step is to give the URL, the address of your VSTS account. That's how the tool is going to, create the connection between your source code and all that stuff and create the CI/CD pipeline for you in VSTS. You're going to need a personal access token so that the tool can access your VSTS account, and this is how you get. If you go into the VSTS portal, you go into the security section, and here is how you can create a personal access token for yourself. Once you copy that and you paste it in, you're going to get a list of your agents. So in this case, I got a hosted Visual Studio 2017 agent, I got a hosted Linux preview agent, and I got a private agent as well. I got my own VM defined as an agent. For this example, I just picked the VS 2017, the default agent. And the next step is to pick some type of an application to create. So in this case, we're starting from scratch. We don't even have an app. So the Yeoman generator will actually create us an app out of the box, ASP.NET app. In this case, I'm selecting .NET Core to proceed. And then the next step is the destination. Where are we going to do the deployment? What's the deployment destination? In this case, I'm picking Azure App Service because that's kind of the easier one maybe. You can select Azure App Service with deployment slots. You can select Azure Container Instances or App Service with Docker and so on and so forth. So you can even use your own Docker host if you have one. So the next step would be, do you want to install the dependencies so that it works locally? No, I don't want it. And finally, once you do that, it's going to start the full process. It's going to go step by step, and it's going to create a full CI/CD pipeline. It's going to create a new ASP.NET Core out-of-the-box project locally on your machine. It is going to push it. It's going to create a local Git repository. It's going to push all of the code to your Git repository in VSTS. It is going to create a continuous integration pipeline, including the build definition, the release definition, and it is going to even have infrastructure as code stuff, which means whenever you run the build definition, the release definition will kick in, and the release definition is going to use an ARM template to create the environment in Azure for you. The full stack will be enabled when you go step by step through these screenshots that at the end of this deck, you're going to see the link to download the deck as well. If you go step by step, and when you run the final script, it's going to create all of these tools for you. You can, tap in, just execute it, push the first Git commit, and it's going to trigger all of the process, create the environment, and deploy it, the full pipeline. It is going to even run some unit tests in it. So what we can do as a next step is to start digging into it and see to figure out how and understand how these pieces connect to each other, and keep researching if you want to customize the pipeline. Again, this is this is the full picture, kind of. I mean, this is the only marketing slide of this deck. This is just to show you the variety that, of the tools that you can use with VSTS and the Microsoft stack. So let's go, let's recap the whole thing. It's important to unite the people. I love to go back to that step because, I mean, we are talking about the tools and the products and the services a lot, but again, it's very important to unite the people and make them understand, help them understand that you are trying to deliver value to your customers. That's, hopefully that's the takeaway from this session. And the second takeaway would be, if you got nothing, I mean, you can be sure that you will find everything that you need if you start with the Microsoft stack. If you got some of the pieces, then you can look into the Microsoft stack and be sure that you're going to find what you are missing and complete your DevOps picture. So thank you very much. Here's the link to download the deck. And keep in touch. And if you have any questions, I'm always on Twitter. Hit me up there as well. Thanks for watching.